Chapter 41 The Gathering Storm in Midgard. Midgard had always lived beneath the shadow of powers beyond mortal reach. Farmers prayed to the sky for rain, sailors prayed to the sea for calm, and warriors prayed to the gods for glory. Yet now, prayers faltered on trembling lips, for the world itself seemed to shudder. The seas boiled with storms unseen for generations. Black clouds swirled, blotting out the sun for days at a time. Crops withered as rains fell too harsh, then none at all. Fishermen whispered of monstrous waves that rose from a still ocean, devouring boats whole. Even the bravest among them refused to sail. It was said in hushed voices that something vast moved beneath the waters, a coil so great it stirred the tides. Mothers clutched their children, old men spat into the dirt and muttered of omens. A storm was gathering, not of mere weather, but of fate itself. Far inland, in the mead halls and villages of Midgard, fear began to weave itself into every tale. Wandering skalds carried stories of gods stirring restlessly, of lightning that split mountains, of seas turned venomous. And among these tales, one name returned again and again. Though most mortals had never seen the serpent, they felt its presence. Fishermen pulled up nets full of fish that stank of poison. Rivers turned green and foul. Storms carried strange, hissing whispers across the night, as though the ocean itself spoke in a forgotten tongue. In a village by the coast, a boy named Eirik clutched a small hammer-shaped amulet around his neck. It had been carved by his father in honor of Thor. Standing on the shoreline, he watched waves rise unnaturally high, crashing against the cliffs like the fists of a giant. Lightning split the sky, and for the first time in his young life, he felt that the gods were not only watching, but struggling. His grandmother, a hunched woman with eyes clouded by age, laid a trembling hand on his shoulder. "Do you hear it, child?" she whispered. "The hiss beneath the thunder. That is the serpent's breath. When it rises, the world will tremble. Pray to Thor, for only he can keep the skies from falling." Meanwhile, far across the land, kings and jarls held councils. They gathered in great halls, lit by fire, drinking horns abandoned as dread pressed upon them. Messengers spoke of whole fleets swallowed by the sea, of lightning striking the same place again and again, as if guided by unseen hands. One chieftain, beard long and braided, slammed his fist on the table. "This is not chance. The gods are moving. The serpent stirs. If Ragnarok is upon us, we must prepare." Another scoffed, though his voice trembled. "And what can men do against gods and monsters? Build walls against waves, spears against thunder." The hall fell silent. For once, warriors had no answers. High in Asgard, Thor watched all of this from the edge of the Bifrost. He could feel the cries of Midgard in the thunder. Each plea carried upward like sparks into the sky. Loki stood beside him, amused and grim all at once. "They sense it," Loki said softly. "Mortals are cleverer than you give them credit for. They know the storm gathers. They know the serpent stirs." Thor's face was carved from stone. "Let them sense it. Let them fear. Fear sharpens the will to fight. And when the serpent rises, I will be there." Loki tilted his head, sly grin tugging at his lips. "Yes, you will. But tell me, brother, will they sing of you as savior, or curse you as the stormbringer?" Thor did not answer. Instead, he tightened his grip on Mjolnir, gazing down at Midgard. He could not deny the truth. His vow had roused Jörmungandr, and now the serpent's shadow stretched across the mortal realm. The gathering storm pressed on, relentless. Fields drowned, villages sank, and sailors swore they glimpsed the tip of a scale larger than a ship. And with every crash of thunder, every wave that struck the shore, Midgard whispered the same fear. The serpent is waking. Ragnarok draws near. Chapter 42. Loki's ominous prophecy. The halls of Asgard glowed with uneasy firelight. The gods gathered, restless and grim, as storms tore across the skies. Each clap of thunder rattled the golden walls, and each streak of lightning felt like a warning carved into the heavens. Odin sat upon his high throne, one eye darkened with thought, the other blazing with foresight. At the base of the throne, Loki lingered like a shadow. His presence was unwelcome, yet none dared cast him out, for even the trickster had grown quiet. And when Loki grew quiet, it meant he carried something heavy. "Speak," Odin commanded at last, his voice echoing like the crack of a spear. "You carry words that weigh upon you. Spit them out, before silence crushes us all." Loki smiled faintly, though the gleam in his eyes was colder than the winds of Nip. "You ask for truth, All-Father, though I doubt you will like its taste. Very well. The storm in Midgard is no mere storm. It is the serpent stretching its coils, preparing for the day foretold. Jörmungandr is rising, and with him rises the end of all things." A ripple of unease passed through the hall. Even Thor's grip on Mjolnir tightened, though his jaw set in defiance. Loki stepped forward, his voice lower now, almost serpentine in its rhythm. "The prophecy is older than even your reign, Odin. It was whispered in the shadows of Ginnungagap, long before Yggdrasil spread its roots. It tells of the great serpent, Jörmungandr, who will one day uncoil from the depths of the sea. His movement will stir storms that swallow ships, his venom will poison the sky, and his jaws will stretch wide enough to devour the world." He let the words hang, savoring the discomfort they sowed. And who will stand against him? Who else but the god of thunder himself? Thor raised his head, his eyes blazing like stormfire. "Then let it be so. If the serpent dares rise, I will face him. Mjolnir will crush his skull, and his poison will fall harmless upon the waves." Loki chuckled darkly. "Oh, my brother, how glorious you sound. But you forget, the prophecy does not end with your triumph. No, it ends with death. You will meet the serpent on the field of Ragnarok. You will strike, and he will fall. But in his dying breath, he will drown you in his venom. You will die together, two forces locked in fate's embrace, thunder and serpent, destroyer and slain." The hall fell into silence. Even Odin did not speak. The only sound was the low rumble of thunder outside, as if the world itself confirmed Loki's words. Frigg, queen of the Aesir, stepped forward with sorrow in her eyes. "Must it be so? Can no thread of fate be cut, no knot unraveled?" Loki's smile softened, though it was a cruel softness, like a wolf baring its teeth. "Fate is a river, Frigg. You may dam it, you may divert it, but it will always find its course. Even I cannot twist this thread completely. I merely see where it leads." Thor's voice boomed, cutting through the tension. "Then I care nothing for prophecy. Let it say what it will. I will fight, not because fate commands it, but because I am Thor. If the serpent rises, I will strike him down, even if my blood fills the sea." Loki tilted his head, studying his brother. For a fleeting moment, something unreadable flickered across his face: admiration, or perhaps sorrow. Then it was gone, replaced by mischief once more. "Very well, Thunderer. Rage against fate, if you must. But remember, prophecy does not bind the will. It only whispers what is to come. The question is not whether you will fight the serpent. The question is whether you will do so as a hero or as a corpse. The storm outside howled louder, rattling the very stones of Asgard. The gods stood silent, each lost in the weight of Loki's prophecy. And far below, in the depths of the sea, Jörmungandr shifted once more, his coils brushing the roots of the world. The end had not yet come, but its shadow stretched ever closer. Chapter 43. Thor's Oath Beneath the Storm. The storm had not ceased since Loki's prophecy had been spoken. It raged above Asgard, rolling with endless thunder, as though the heavens themselves anticipated Thor's choice. The golden walls trembled, not from fear, but from the unrelenting fury of the skies. Thor stood in the center of the hall, Mjolnir in his hand, his eyes reflecting the stormlight. Around him, the Aesir waited Odin, with his inscrutable gaze, Frigg with sorrow etched upon her face, Heimdall standing tall with Jallarhorn in his grasp, and Loki lurking in the shadows, his sly smile daring Thor to defy fate. At last, Thor lifted Mjolnir and strode to the great doors of the hall. He pushed them open, and the storm winds rushed in like a living beast, whipping his red cloak into the night. Lightning licked the skies, and rain poured upon the marble steps, hissing as it struck the braziers. Thor raised his hammer high, his voice carrying above the roar of the tempest. Fate may weave its dark threads, but I will not cower before them. Hear me now, gods of Asgard, giants of Jotunheim, and beasts of the deep Sisyph. Jörmungandr dares to rise. I will face him. I will meet him, not with fear, but with thunder and steel. Let the serpent's venom fall. Let his coils tighten around the world. Still I will strike, until either he falls, or I am no more. The thunder seemed to answer him, a violent crack splitting the clouds overhead. The storm became his witness. Odin rose from his throne, staff in hand, his one eye gleaming like fire through the dark. Bold words, my son, yet you know the cost. Should the prophecy hold true, your courage will buy only your own end. Thor turned, rain streaming down his face, his jaw set like iron. Then let it be so. What is life without battle? What is a god who fears his doom? If I am to fall, let me fall with Mjolnir in hand, and let the 9 realms remember that Thor, son of Odin, did not bow to fate, but faced it head-on. The hall echoed with his declaration. Some gods raised their voices in support, pounding their shields in approval. Others remained silent, their hearts heavy with dread. Loki chuckled softly from the shadows, his voice smooth as venom. Ah, Thor, always the hammer, never the hand that weaves. Perhaps that is why fate loves you so. Still, I will enjoy watching you fight, even if it is to your last breath. Thor glared at him, but said nothing. His oath had been spoken, and it rang louder than any jest Loki could muster. Frigg approached, placing a hand on Thor's shoulder, her eyes shimmering with unshed tears. Then promise me this, my son, when the time comes, do not fight for pride, nor for prophecy. Fight for those who cannot fight for themselves. Fight for Asgard, for Midgard, for all who look to you for light. Thor's expression softened, if only for a heartbeat. He bowed his head to her. I swear it, mother. My strength is not my own, it belongs to the realms. Should I fall, it will be so that others may live. The storm grew fiercer still, lightning striking the mountains beyond, as though Yggdrasil itself shuddered. Thor stepped forward, raising Mjolnir to the sky. I swear upon thunder and storm, upon blood and steel, that I will face the serpent when the time comes. No matter the venom, no matter the coils, I will strike until Jörmungandr lies broken. Let the storm bear witness to my oath." The skies roared in answer, and the gods knew his vow had bound not only his will, but his very fate. Far below, beneath the black waves of Midgard's seas, the great serpent stirred. His coils shifted, sensing the vow, and for the first time in centuries, his monstrous eyes opened. They glowed like twin suns in the abyss. The oath had been made. The path to Ragnarok drew nearer. Chapter 44. The Gathering of Shadows. Beneath the 9 realms, where light had long since drowned in the abyss, the shadows stirred. Thor's oath had not only echoed through the halls of Asgard, had rippled across Yggdrasil, reaching into the darkest corners, where old enemies waited, watching. The frost giants gathered upon the cliffs of eternal ice, the aurora above them writhing like serpents of green fire. Their king, towering and pale as death, raised a horn carved from glacier bone. "The gods have sworn their oath," he growled, his voice carrying across the frozen plains. "Thor challenges fate itself. Let him come. Let him strike at the serpent, for when his strength fails, Asgard will stand open to us once more." The giants roared in answer, their weapons of jagged ice glittering beneath the stars. In Helheim, deep in the realm of the dead, Hel, daughter of Loki, sat upon her throne of bone. One side of her face fair, the other rotted and grim. She smiled a cold, knowing smile. "The storm child has bound himself," she whispered, her voice carrying to the legions of the restless dead. "He will fight the serpent, and the venom will claim him. When Thor falls, so too shall Asgard's shield. Prepare yourselves, for soon I shall unleash you upon the living." The dead stirred restlessly, their hollow eyes flickering with faint embers. Chains rattled, graves cracked, and Helheim pulsed with anticipation. In the depths of the sea, far below Midgard's waves, the serpent Jörmungandr uncoiled, sensing the shifting threads of fate. His scales shimmered with bioluminescent fire, illuminating the ocean floor as he stretched his monstrous body. The vow of Thor had awakened his hunger. He tasted the storm in the water, the thunder reverberating through the currents. With a hiss that rumbled like an earthquake, he wound tighter around the world, his coils squeezing the very oceans. The seas raged, and sailors whispered in terror of monstrous waves that rose without wind, believing the end was near. In the forests of Midgard, mortals too felt the shift. Shamans dreamed of fire consuming the sky, of wolves devouring the sun and moon, of a great hammer shattering a serpent's skull. Their warnings spread like wildfire, and though few believed, a seed of dread grew in the hearts of men. In the shadows of Asgard, Loki watched all unfold, his smile a blade sharp with malice. Though he had stood in Thor's presence, hearing his oath, he had also whispered into the ears of shadows, feeding them with secrets and promises. The trickster stood upon the rainbow bridge that shimmered faintly under the storm. Heimdall watched him from afar, hand upon Jallarhorn, but Loki did not care. His thoughts were already far beyond. "Let them prepare," Loki murmured. "Let Thor believe his strength will save them. The more he fights against fate, the tighter the noose will draw. When the final dawn comes, all shall play their part, gods, giants, beasts, and even I." He raised his eyes to the storm-filled sky, where lightning split the heavens. And oh, how glorious the ruin will be. The omen, that very night, across all realms, the same omen appeared. A wolf's shadow crossed the moon, blotting its silver light. and a serpent's hiss echoed faintly in every corner of the world. The gods knew, the mortals feared, and the enemies of Asgard sharpened their blades. The gathering of shadows had begun. Chapter 45. The Veil of Freya. The halls of Asgard had fallen into a hush that felt like frost. Word had spread as fast as lightning. Mjolnir was gone, and with it, the courage of many who had thought the hammer's nearness a wall against chaos. From every balcony and bridge came the same question, whispered like a prayer. How do the gods breathe when the storm has been stolen from the sky? Thrym's message arrived at dawn on a slab of rime-carved ice, hauled by oxen that steamed in the summer air. On it, in runes as jagged as mountain teeth, the giant king wrote his demand. Send me Freya to be my bride, and I will lay the hammer in her lap to seal the vows. The council gathered beneath the silver antlers of Odin on his high seat, Thor pacing like a caged thunderhead, Freya radiant and furious, and Loki slouched in the shadow of a pillar, eyes bright with calculations. Heimdall stood sentinel by the door, the white of his armor cold as a winter star. Freya struck the message plaque with the back of her hand, ice dust scattered like broken glass. I will not be led in chains to the bed of a frost thing, she said, voice ringing like steel. Let him rot beneath his own roof. Let him choke on the snow he eats. Thor's hands opened and closed, yearning for a haft that was not there. Give me a ship, he snarled. Give me a spear. Give me anything made to break, and I will go to Jotunheim and tear the hammer out of his skull, and be struck dead by 100 spears before you cross his threshold. Odin said quietly. The Allfather's single eye carried the far sight of old hunger. He could see the path to Thrym's hall, and the red stains that would follow Thor's feet if rage were his only guide. We need cunning as much as courage. Heimdall inclined his head, the faintest smile ghosting his lips rare as sunlight in deep winter. Then, let us borrow both, he said. I have a thought. All faces turned. Thrym wants a bride. Give him one. There was a heartbeat of stunned silence, and then Thor's laugh cracked the air. You would pawn our sister for a trinket. Freya's gaze could have frozen fire. Say that again, Odinson, and I will mount your head on my chariot. Heimdall did not flinch. Not a likeness. A veil may hide a multitude. A bride may be tall, specially from a house of warriors. Mjolnir must be set in the bride's lap to bless the union. The moment it touches her knees, Thor stopped laughing. Loki's grin grew very slow and very wide. No, Thor said. Yes, Loki answered. Thor shook his head so violently the braids rattled. I will not wear a woman's veil. I will not mince like a maiden before a room full of giants. Then leave Mjolnir where it lies, Loki purred. Let the sea serpent stir and the wolf grow fat. Let mortals pray to empty sky. It will be a fine boast. Thor saved his pride while the world burned. Enough, Odin said, but his voice carried a reluctant agreement that stung like sleet. Heimdall's plan is our best road through snow and spears. If Thor's hand can touch the hammer, the tale ends in thunder. Freya folded her arms, chin lifted. None of my raiment leaves without my leave. Loki bowed from the waist. Lady, we beg the lend of your splendor no more. The necklace to hold the veil. 8 bracelets to distract dull giant eyes. A girdle to narrow what cannot be narrowed. Freya's stare shifted to Thor and softened just a breath. If I grant this, you will remember those who keep Asgard's beauty while you thunder about its walls. Thor swallowed the last of his pride like a bitter herb. Grant it, and I will owe you a gift worth a goddess. "See that you live long enough to pay," she said, and with a gesture that made the lamps dim, she summoned her treasures. So began the work. Dwarven needles flashed in the forges below, stitching whale silk to hold against a god's shoulders. Loki fetched glamours from the edges of night, laying them like frost across the lines of Thor's face, smoothing the beard into shadow, softening the storm in his eyes to the downcast fire of a maiden's shyness. Heimdall adjusted the veil thrice, testing how it fell in torchlight and moon. At each tug, Thor muttered a curse that would have split ships' masts if spoken on open water. "Walk," Heimdall commanded. Thor tried. The first step shattered a stool. The second sent a scatter of pearls, skittering like hailstones. "Float," Loki corrected, and sketched a sigil at Thor's heels. "Think of yourself as a cloud that learned to kill." "Clouds do not kill," Thor gritted. "Then be the first." Sigyn, silent, steadfast, appeared, unasked, with a silver tray of pins. Her eyes did not meet Loki's, yet she set the last pin at Thor's throat with a precision that made the disguise whole. Freya fastened herself, and the necklace's glow spread over the veil like sunrise through snow. "Your hands," Freya said, catching Thor's fingers. "Hide them. Giants will be watching for a warrior's grip." She slid rings on each knuckle, moons and falcons and tears of amber until his fists looked like a queen's idle play, not a storm's beginning. Loki changed his own garb for that of a handmaid, pale and coy, with a knife no longer than a breath tucked against his spine. "I will whisper for you when their questions grow sharp," he said. "You will be hungry, brides always are. You will be keen, for the hammer brides always are. And when they wonder at your eyes, well, love makes embers of the shyest fire." Thor, "If you make one jest beyond the last, I can stomach. I will." "You will thank me," Loki said lightly, and turned to Odin. "Father of hosts, the cart, not goats and thunder this time, but a bridal wain of white ash, ruined in secret under its paint. 2 oxen were harnessed with bells that chimed like distant ice. Drapes of frost silk hung from the rails, hiding Melnir's absence as surely as they hid the groomless fury of the bride. Odin stood before them, old and tall, the wind sunk deep in his cloak. "Once you cross the far ice, my eye cannot shield you. Speak when you must, strike when you can, flee when the deed is done. The end of this road is blood, it not be yours." He laid his hand, fierce and aching, on Thor's veiled head, and for a flicker the disguise slipped. Beneath the gauze, a storm looked back at a winter sun. Then the veil fell true again. Heimdall took the yoke, guiding the oxen toward Bifrost. The rainbow's light dimmed as they passed, hiding bride and maid and mission in a swirl of color that tasted like iron. Loki leaned close beneath the curtains and murmured, "Remember, sister, keep your temper." "Remember, maid," Thor muttered through his teeth, "to keep your lies quick." They crossed into the breathless cold of Jotunheim under a sky scabbed with cloud. Far ahead, through cliffs like broken tusks, the lanterns of Thrym's hall bobbed and pooled a honeycomb of orange warmth, cut into the blue of endless night. Loki's smile thinned. Their waits a hall full of spears and questions, but beyond them, on a dais of ice, a shape under a bare. "When that shape touches your knees, end this." "Gladly," Thor said. Behind them, Asgard's torches dwindled to sparks. Before them, the giant king's banners cracked in the wind. The oxen's bells chimed once, twice, like a heartbeat. The bride's veil did not tremble. They drove on into the dark. Chapter 46, The Feast of Shadows. The long hall of Thrym, the frost giant, gleamed with torches that sputtered in the cold air. Shadows danced on the walls of ice, stretching like grotesque spirits as the giants bellowed with laughter, their voices booming like thunder over the mountains. Tonight was no ordinary feast night. They were to wed Freya, the fairest goddess of Asgard, to their king. None suspected that beneath the veil of bridal silk and golden ornaments sat Thor, god of thunder, his stormy eyes hidden behind lashes blackened with soot. At his side, whispering constantly, was Loki, disguised as a handmaiden. His sharp tongue saved them time and again, but even he felt the weight of danger pressing upon them. Around them sat row after row of frost giants, massive forms with tusked mouths and fangs glittering in the torchlight. Their laughter shook the rafters, their cups of mead clashing like boulders in a storm. Thor gripped his knees, forcing his hands to remain still. Every nerve in his body screamed to reach for Mjolnir, his hammer, but it was not yet within his grasp. The weapon of storms had been stolen and lay at the front of the hall, locked within a chest beside Thrym's throne, awaiting the moment it would be given as a wedding gift. "Patience," Loki hissed, tugging at Thor's sleeve as if scolding a bride. "Smile, less like a wolf, more like a maiden." Thor growled under his breath, his jaw clenched. "If one more of these beasts looks at me as though I were their prize goat, I will break this hall to splinters." "Not yet," Loki murmured, lips curling into a sly grin. Soon, very soon, the hall erupted with a horn blast. Thrym entered, towering above his kin. His beard was crusted with frost, his eyes glowed with a hunger both for power and for beauty. He lifted his cup high and roared, "Tonight, I claim Freya as my queen. With her by my side, the frost giants will reign over gods and men alike. Even Odin shall tremble." The giants cheered, stamping their feet until the ground shook. They looked at Thor, believing him Freya, and their laughter turned to low whistles of awe. Thor's fury burned hotter, but still he sat, playing his part. Then came the feasting. Platters of roasted oxen, steaming cauldrons of stew, and endless loaves of dark bread were carried forth. The giants ate greedily, tossing bones aside like twigs. When food was set before Thor, he pounced upon it with a hunger that startled even Loki. He devoured an entire ox in mere bites, swallowed 8 salmon whole, and drained 3 barrels of mead in a single gulp. The hall fell silent. The giants stared, wide. Thrym himself frowned. "Never have I seen a bride so ravenous. Does Freya eat like a pack of wolves?" Loki laughed, bowing low to hide his trembling. "Ah, my lord, you do not know the hearts of goddesses. Freya has fasted for 8 nights in her longing for this wedding. Her hunger is but love's fire consuming her." The hall burst into laughter, and Thrym's suspicion faded into delight. He leaned closer to his bride, his icy breath foul with mead. "Then let me gaze upon your eyes, fair Freya, for they are said to burn like stars." Thor's eyes blazed, wild and deadly, sparks of storm barely contained. The giant recoiled at the fire in them, muttering, "Never have I seen eyes so fierce in a woman." Quick as ever, Loki stepped forward. "My lord, such is the flame of passion. For 8 nights she has not slept, so burning is her desire to join with you. Her eyes shine with that longing." The hall roared again with laughter. Thrym's face split into a grin, his suspicions dulled by mead and flattery. At last the time came. The priests of the frost giants rose, carrying forth the chest of carved ice, where Mjolnir lay hidden. The hall grew hushed, every torch flickering as though fearing the moment to come. Thrym raised his arms. "Bring forth the hammer," he cried. "Lay it upon the lap of my bride, that the gods themselves may bless this union." Thor's heart thundered in his chest. He felt the storm within him rising, straining against his disguise. His hands itched to grasp the weapon that had been torn from him, his soul aching for the power of the storm. The chest was placed before him. The lid was opened, and there, gleaming with runes of lightning, rested the hall held its breath. Thor's fingers twitched, and Loki's grin sharpened like a knife. The Feast of Shadows was over. The storm was about to break. Chapter 47. Thor's Eyes of Fire. The Hall of Thrym seemed to shrink around Thor as the hammer was revealed. Mjolnir rested in its icy cradle, humming with the power of storms, as if it too longed for its master's hand. The runes etched upon its surface flickered faintly like caged lightning, each pulse calling out to Thor's soul. He could feel it, his heart, his blood, his very breath aligned with the rhythm of the weapon. The disguise of silk and veil no longer mattered. He was no bride, no meek goddess to be claimed. He was Thor, son of Odin, breaker of giants, god of thunder. Yet still, he held himself. The hall was filled with giants, each one strong enough to crush stone with their fists. But Thor knew once Mjolnir was in his grasp, all their might would count for nothing. Thrym, swollen with pride and wine, gestured for the chest to be placed upon Thor's lap. "Here lies the hammer, Freya, gift of the giants to seal our bond. With it upon your knees, the wedding is made sacred." The hall went silent. All eyes turned to the veiled figure. Thor lowered his gaze, letting the silken veil conceal his face. His hand moved slowly, trembling not with fear, but with the storm pressing within him, desperate to be unleashed. His fingers brushed the cold metal. The instant he touched it, thunder cracked within the hall. The torches guttered, shadows leaped across the icy walls, and the air grew heavy with the scent of rain. Thor's grip closed around the haft. The disguise fell away in spirit, if not in form. His back straightened, his eyes blazing like twin suns. No longer could he pretend. Thrym leaned closer, frowning. What fire is this in my bride's eyes?" Thor tore the veil from his face. His gaze, fierce and unyielding, burned with the fury of the storm. Sparks leaped from his skin, his breath thundered in his chest, and his voice rang out, filling the hall with dread. "You fools! Did you think to wed the goddess Freya? Did you think to chain the gods with your theft? It is I, Thor, the Thunderer, and with this hammer I will bring ruin upon you all." Gasps turned to roars as the frost giants scrambled to rise. Cups clattered to the ground, benches overturned, weapons were seized. Yet none moved swiftly enough. Thor rose, Mjolnir blazing with lightning crackled across the hall, bursting torches into flame. His eyes burned brighter than the fire itself, searing through the fear of every giant present. For a heartbeat, the frost giants beheld the wrath of a god unmasked, the raw, unstoppable force of the storm incarnate. Then Thor struck. The hammer swung, and thunder split the air. The Feast of Shadows became a feast of death. Chapter 48. The Hammer Unleashed. The first blow shattered the high table. Plates of silver, goblets of gold, and whole boars roasted for the feast flew into the air as if caught in a tempest. The frost giants stumbled back, their laughter and drunken boasting replaced by screams of fear. Thor rose to his full height, Mjolnir in his hands, the storm coursing through his veins. He was no longer bound by veil, or disguise. The god of thunder stood revealed in all his fury. Lightning rippled across the rafters. Thunder shook the stones beneath their feet, and the hall of Thrym became a battlefield. With a roar, Thor hurled Mjolnir at the first giant to charge him. The hammer spun like a storm-driven star, smashing through the giant's chest and bursting out the other side in a spray of frost and blood. Before the body had even fallen, the hammer returned to Thor's hand. Loki, still cloaked in the garb of the handmaiden, ducked beneath an overturned bench. His eyes were wide, but his grin grew sharp. At last, he muttered to himself, "The storm is unleashed." Thrym, regaining his senses, bellowed across the hall, "Seize him! Crush the usurper! The hammer is ours!" But even as he spoke, Thor moved again. Mjolnir rose and fell, each strike cracking skulls, breaking bones, and tearing through the ranks of giants as though they were nothing but brittle ice. With every blow, thunder rolled, shaking the mountains outside, and lightning burst from the hammer's runes, searing flesh and fire alike into the Frostborn. The giants fought back with axes as tall as trees and spears tipped with black ice, but their weapons shattered against Mjolnir's storm-forged might. One hurled a boulder large enough to crush a hall, yet Thor split it in two with a single swing. Another giant tried to bind him with chains of ice, but lightning leaped from the hammer and melted the bindings before they touched him. The hall itself groaned beneath the fury. Beams cracked, the roof sagged, and shards of ice rained down from the rafters. Still, Thor fought on, his laughter booming like thunder, each strike of the hammer echoing across the 9 realms. Thrym, realizing the doom upon him, tried to flee. He turned, shoving his way past his own kin, but Thor saw him. With a cry that split the air, Thor leaped forward. "Reem, you dared to steal from the gods. You dared to mock the Allfather's house. Now, pay with your life." He hurled Mjolnir, and the hammer struck Thrym square in the chest. The giant king's body crumpled, crushed like a mountain beneath its own weight. Thrym's cry was swallowed by thunder as he fell, his crown of frost rolling across the shattered floor. For a moment, silence hung over the hall. Then, one by one, the giants, who remained, turned and fled into the night, their courage broken. Thor stood amidst the wreckage, his chest heaving, his hair wild with storm winds, his hammer gleaming in the firelight. The hall was no more a place of feasting, but a ruin of death and shattered stone. Loki crept out from hiding, brushing frost from his borrowed gown. He looked around at the carnage, then at Thor, and smirked. "Well, brother, I must say you certainly know how to bring a wedding to an end." Thor wiped the sweat and blood from his brow, raising "No feast of giants shall ever hold my hammer again. Let this hall stand as a warning. Mjolnir belongs to Thor, and Thor alone." Lightning split the sky outside, as if the heavens themselves answered. Chapter 49. The flight from Jotunheim. The hall lay in ruins, smoke rising from shattered timbers, and the corpses of giants strewn like broken mountains across the floor. Yet Thor's hammer still crackled with stormlight, eager for battle. Loki, dusting ash and frost from his gown, glanced uneasily at the wreckage. "Thor," he said with a crooked smile, "as impressive as that was, we must remember we are still deep in Jotunheim. And where there is one hall of giants, there are many more. The longer we linger, the more likely their kin will come." Thor grunted, tightening his grip on Mjolnir. "Let them come. I'll crush them all, as I crushed Thrym." Loki shook his head quickly. "That may be your way, Stormbringer, but if we fight them all, Even you, may Tyrand, I, for one, would prefer not to meet my end in a frost giant's stew pot." Thor laughed, the sound echoing like thunder among the ruined beams. "Very well, trickster. We will leave, but mark this. If any giant dares bar our path, they shall taste Mjolnir before their death." The two gods stepped out into the freezing night. The winds of Jotunheim howled, carrying with them the distant rumble of war horns. Shadows moved among the peaks, giants, stirred by the fall of their king. Loki glanced over his shoulder. "Ah, it seems the news travels fast. Perhaps we should move faster." Thor lifted Mjolnir and swung it in a great arc. The hammer hummed, lightning bursting from its runes, and the winds shifted. "Climb upon my back," he said. "This hammer will carry us across the skies." Loki raised a brow, lips curling with mischief. "Ride you like a steed. Now there's an image I'll cherish for centuries." But despite his jest, he leaped up, clinging to Thor's shoulders. With a mighty heave, Thor hurled Mjolnir forward, and in an instant the two gods soared into the storm-filled sky. The mountains dropped away beneath them, jagged teeth of ice swallowed by mist. Behind, the war horns grew louder, and torches flared along the ridges as giants gathered for pursuit. Yet Thor's hammer drew them swift as lightning, leaping from peak to peak. The cold bit at their faces, and snow whipped into their eyes, but nothing could match the storm's speed. Still, Loki peered down and muttered, "They won't give up easily. Slaying their king will stir every clan of Jot. I suspect this tale will echo in their halls for generations." Thor's laugh rolled like thunder. "Let them remember. Let them tell their children's children." Thor of Asgard reclaimed his hammer, and no giant lived to keep it from him. As they sped across the sky, lightning illuminating their flight, the pursuit slowly dwindled. The horns grew faint, the torches vanished into darkness, and the peaks of Jotunheim lay behind them. At last, far in the distance, the shimmering glow of Bifrost, the rainbow bridge, came into view. Heimdall's watchful gaze awaited them, and beyond it, the golden spires of Asgard. Loki leaned close and whispered, half to himself, "We return victorious, but the giants will not forget. This night may yet sow seeds of vengeance." Thor only smiled, his eyes blazing with stormfire. "Then let them come, for as long as Mjolnir is in my hand, Asgard shall never fall." The hammer blazed brighter, carrying them onward toward home, as the storm of their triumph roared across the 9 realms. Chapter 50. The Gods Rejoice. The rainbow bridge shimmered with radiant colors as Thor and Loki descended from the storm-wreathed skies. The arcs of light gleamed like molten crystal under their feet, and the watchman, Heimdall, ever vigilant, stood tall at its edge, his golden eyes keen enough to see across worlds, narrowed as he beheld the hammer in Thor's grasp. "So," Heimdall said, his voice carrying the clarity of a horn call, "the wolf was right to howl. I felt the tremors in Jotunheim, and saw the lightning blaze across their peaks. You have returned, Thor Odinson, and with Mjolnir in hand once more." Thor lifted the hammer proudly, its runes glowing with the fierce joy of battle. "The giants thought to shame Asgard by stealing my weapon. Instead, they learned fear. Thrym lies broken, and his hall with him. None shall ever again doubt the wrath of Thor." Loki stepped forward with a sly grin, brushing dust and frost from his cloak. "You forget one detail, Thunderer. Had I not woven this little charade, had you not worn the bridal veil, Mjolnir would still lie buried in the ice halls of Jotunheim. So, perhaps a word of thanks. Heimdall's lips twitched with something close to amusement. And yet, Loki, without Thor's strength, your trick would have ended in both your deaths. The wolf howls, the serpent coils, and the storm breaks, but, together, it seems, you found victory. The gates of Asgard opened as the two strode across before. Word of their return spread swiftly through the Golden City. Soon, the halls of Gladsheim echoed with cheers. Warriors lifted their spears, maidens raised their voices in song, and the clang of shields resounded like drums of triumph. Freya herself stood waiting, her eyes like twin suns burning with anger and relief. You dared use me as a pawn in your schemes, Loki, she said, her voice sharp as a blade. And you, Thor, donned my guise without my leave. Thor bowed his head, though a smile tugged at his lips. Forgive us, fair goddess. It was the only way. The giants sought to wed you by force. Instead, they found their doom. Freya's glare lingered on Loki, who bowed with mock grace. A jest that saved us all, he said, though her silence promised he would one day pay for it. Then Odin Allfather rose from his high throne, in his single eye shining with wisdom and shadow. Thor, son of Yor, you have done well. Asgard's heart beats strong again, for Mjolnir returns to its master. The storm is restored, and our enemies lie broken. The Allfather's gaze fell to Loki, sharp as a raven's beak. And you, my son of mischief, wove lies that bore truth. Though your tongue drips venom, today it served Asgard. Take what honor you will from this. The hall thundered with feasting. Mead flowed like rivers, roasted boar and oxen were carried in by the trays, and the skalds raised their voices, weaving the tale into song. They sang of the lost hammer, of Thor, the bride, of the slaughter in Thrym's hall. Thor drank deep, his laughter booming like storms above the sea. Loki, ever watchful, sipped his mead with a sly smile, already weaving plots within plots. And so, for a time, Asgard rejoiced. The hammer was safe, the gods victorious, the halls filled with light and song. Yet in the shadows of the far realms, the giants licked their wounds. They swore oaths of vengeance under the cold stars, and in the whispering dark, threads of fate began to weave toward a greater storm. For though the gods celebrated, Ragnarok still loomed on the horizon. Chapter 51. The Seeds of Vengeance. Far from the shining halls of Asgard, deep in the shadowed crags of Jotunheim, the silence after Thor's wrath still lingered. Thrym's hall lay in ruins, its beams shattered, its walls torn asunder. Blood had frozen on the ice, a dark reminder of Thor's storm and the thunderous judgment of Mjolnir. Yet among the ruins, not all giants had perished. Survivors crawled from beneath the broken stones and twisted pillars, their eyes burning with grief and hatred. Mothers wept for fallen sons, brothers swore oaths over broken spears, and the wind carried their cries across the mountains like a funeral dirge. In the shadows of a jagged peak, the frost giantess Skadi stood watching. Once a goddess by marriage, once seated in the halls of Asgard, she now stood apart, her bow slung across her back. Her eyes were colder than the glaciers beneath her feet. They mock us, she whispered, her voice like the hiss of snow against stone. They came into our hall in disguise, and they butchered us beneath our own roof. They think us fools, unworthy of honor. But the gods forget, the wheel of fate turns for all, even for them. A scarred giant, taller than a pine tree, stepped forward. He bore a jagged axe in his hand, its edge glimmering with runes carved in ancient ice. Thrym is dead, and with him, our pride. but his blood shall not fall in vain. I swear by the frozen rivers, by Ymir's bones, the gods shall one day choke on their laughter. The giants gathered around, their breath rising like a storm cloud. From grief was born anger, and from anger Skadi lifted her arms to the sky, calling upon the ancient forces that lingered beyond both god and giant. Hear me, Norns, who weave the threads of fate. The gods believe themselves eternal, yet they, too, are bound by your loom. Grant me sight into what is to come. And the wind answered. A shiver passed across the gathering, for in the storm clouds above, faint whispers could be heard, the voices of fate themselves. Though their words were veiled, fragments of prophecy slipped through. The wolf shall break his chains, the serpent shall stir in the depths. The hammer shall fall silent, and fire shall consume the sky. The giants shuddered, yet their eyes gleamed with terrible hope. If the doom of the gods was written, then their vengeance was already assured. Skadi turned to them, her face lit by the pale gleam of the northern lights. We cannot yet strike. Thor is mighty, and Odin watches with his one all-seeing eye. But the seeds are sown. One day, the wolf will run free, and the world will burn. On that day, the giants shall rise again, and Asgard shall fall. A roar of approval echoed across the icy cliffs, shaking the frost from their peaks. The vow of vengeance spread among the tribes of Jotunheim, carried on the wind to every cavern and mountain pass. And so the seeds of Ragnarok were planted not in the halls of Asgard, where gods feasted in triumph, but in the hearts of their enemies, who bided their time in silence and snow. The wheel of fate turned slowly, but it never ceased. Chapter 52. Loki's Secret Fears. While the frost giants whispered their oaths of vengeance in Jotunheim, Asgard celebrated. Golden mead flowed like rivers, the echo of Thor's laughter thundered through the feasting hall. And Odin himself raised his horn in triumph. The gods sang of the day they had shamed the giants, reclaiming Mjolnir with trickery and blood. Yet in the shadows of the hall, one figure did not laugh so freely. Loki, the sly god, sat apart, his lips curving into a smile that did not reach his eyes. He had orchestrated the plan, saved Asgard with his cunning, and yet he felt no triumph. For when Thor's hammer had fallen in Jotunheim, Loki had seen something that the others missed. In the blood of the giants, he had glimpsed the weaving threads of fate, glimmering faintly like silver lines in the air. And those threads whispered of a future too terrible to ignore. That night, while the others lay in drunken sleep, Loki wandered out beneath the stars. The Bifrost glimmered in the distance, a rainbow bridge stretching across the cosmos. But Loki's gaze was not on beauty. His eyes searched the dark horizon where Jotunheim's peaks pierced the sky. They will never forgive us, he thought. Every death Thor delivered will return to us threefold. And I, fool that I am, was the one who lit the spark. His heart twisted, for though Loki was called the trickster, though he delighted in mischief and chaos, he was no stranger to fear. And in the silence of the night, fear pressed against him like a cold hand on his throat. He remembered Skadi's icy. He remembered the whispers of the Norns that even he could not silence. The wolf shall break his chains. The serpent shall stir in the depths. A pang of dread struck him, sharper than a dagger. For the wolf was his son Fenrir, bound by the gods themselves. The serpent, too, was his child, Jörmungandr, cast into the ocean's depths. Their doom was his doom, their fury his legacy. Am I the seed of their destruction? Loki whispered into the night air. Do the Norns laugh as they weave, knowing the gods themselves welcomed me into their halls, only to be betrayed by their own guest. The wind carried no answer. Only the rustle of Yggdrasil's great branches filled the silence, as though the world tree itself knew the truth Loki feared to speak. Odin, all-seeing, had long suspected him. Thor trusted him only as far as Mjolnir could be thrown. And yet, they tolerated him, even relied on him. But would they still, if they knew the truth, that the blood of monsters ran in his line, and that his children's jaws were destined to swallow God's whole? Loki clenched his fists. His laughter, so often easy and sharp, now stuck in his throat. For the first time in ages, he felt the weight of inevitability pressing down upon him. And yet, deep in his heart, another thought burned, a dangerous one. If fate has written me as the destroyer, then why should I resist? Why should I bow to the scorn of Odin, the fists of Thor, the jeers of those who think themselves above me? Perhaps it is better to embrace the doom and let the fire consume us all. But then, just as quickly, the thought chilled him. For to embrace fate was to surrender, and Loki was no one's slave, not even the Norns. So he resolved, as he always did, to weave his own path, to twist the threads until even fate itself could not predict his hand. Still, as he returned to Asgard's shining hall, the echo of prophecy clung to him like a shadow. Loki laughed with the others, his wit as sharp as ever, but inside, a secret fear gnawed at him. And though none of the gods saw it, the trickster's smile that night was hollow, his laughter thin. For in the quiet places of his heart, Loki knew the truth. The end of all things was coming, and he would be at its center. Chapter 53. Odin's Uneasy Dreams. The feast of victory had long since faded. Asgard slept. The fires in the great hall burned low, and silence fell across the golden city. Yet in his chamber high within Valaskilaf, Odin Allfather did not sleep easily. His one remaining eye, heavy with age and wisdom, closed at last, but dreams seized him swiftly, and they were not kind. In the dream, Odin stood upon the rainbow bridge stretched before him, but its colors were fading, drained as if by some unseen hand. From the horizon, a shadow rolled forward like a tide, devouring the stars. Then he saw them. A serpent, vast as the oceans, coiled around the world, its venom dripping into the seas. A wolf, black as midnight, with jaws so wide they swallowed the sun itself. And behind them, fire Roseanne, endless blaze, consuming the 9 realms, until even Yggdrasil's roots crackled in the inferno. But it was not the wolf or the serpent that chilled Odin's blood. It was the figure standing amidst the flames. Loki, his eyes gleaming with cunning, his smile both triumphant and sorrowful. You knew this would come, Loki's voice echoed, though his lips did not move. You saw the threads, Allfather, and yet you brought me into your halls. You made me. Was that wisdom more folly? Odin tried to answer, but no sound came from his mouth. He reached for Gungnir, his spear, but it turned to ash in his hands. The flames closed in, screams filled the air, the cries of gods, of mortals, of giants alike. And then Odin saw the faces of his children. Thor, mighty but fallen, Balder, pale as death, Heimdall, lying still with Jallarhorn broken at his side. No, Odin roared, finding his voice at last. This cannot be fate. But above him, the Norns appeared, their forms half shadow, half light. They held their loom, the tapestry of destiny stretched wide, and the threads glowed with fire. It is woven, they whispered, in unison. Even you, Allfather, cannot unmake what is destined. Ragnarok comes. Odin reached for the loom, desperate to tear the threads apart. But the moment his fingers touched them, the dream shattered. He woke with a start. Sweat clung to his brow, despite the cold of the night. For a long moment, he sat in silence, his single eye staring into the darkness. He rose and crossed to the great window of Valhalla. Below, Asgard gleamed in moonlight, peaceful, untouched. The halls of the gods shone like polished gold, their towers strong and proud. Yet Odin's heart was heavy, for though it was only a dream, he knew its truth. Dreams were the whispers of fate, and Odin had long since learned that the Norns did not lie. He closed his eye and murmured to himself, "The wolf grows, the serpent stirs, fire waits to be unleashed." And Loki, his voice hardened. Loki is the key, perhaps our salvation, perhaps our doom. Odin tightened his grip on the window's edge. He would not reveal his dream, not yet. The gods were quick to dismiss what they did not wish to hear, and Thor especially had little patience for warnings. But Odin, burdened with sight beyond sight, could feel the tremors of destiny. And though the others laughed, he knew the truth. The end was closer than they dared believe. Chapter 54. Thor's Restless Vigil. The air of Asgard was clear, the stars bright and sharp above the golden towers. Peace had settled across the realm since the battles with the giants, yet Thor could not rest. Though the warriors of Valhalla sang and feasted, though the halls rang with laughter, the thunder god sat apart, Mjolnir resting heavy in his lap. Sleep had eluded him for many nights. When he closed his eyes, he saw visions, not dreams as Odin's were, but flickers, brief flashes of unrest. He would see the serpent's coils ripple beneath the sea, hear the faint growl of a wolf from beyond the 9 realms, feel the tremor of the earth as though fire beneath the crust longed to break free. Thor told himself it was nothing. He had slain giants enough to fill whole sagas, driven back Jotun incursions, crushed beasts of chaos with his hammer. Yet unease lingered, gnawing at him like hunger. That night, as the Einherjar slept in their great barracks, Thor walked the walls of Asgard. His boots struck the stone with steady rhythm, and lightning hummed faintly along Mjolnir's edge, as if the weapon shared his restlessness. "Why do you grow heavy in my hand?" Thor muttered, gazing down at the hammer. "What storm do you sense that I do not?" From the high walls, he looked out across the Bifrost, glowing faint beneath the night sky. Heimdall stood vigilant at its end, Jallarhorn in hand, eyes ever watchful. Thor descended and joined him. "You are awake as well," Heimdall observed without turning. His gaze was fixed, far beyond sight, into realms unseen. "I cannot sleep," Thor admitted. "There is a weight on me, as if battle waits just beyond the dawn." Heimdall nodded slowly. "You feel what I feel. The threads of fate tremble. I hear whispers, faint, carried on the winds between worlds. Something stirs." Thor gripped Mjolnir tighter. "If it is Loki, I will crush him. If it is giants, I will shatter them. Whatever comes, let it come, I am ready." But Heimdall's face was grave. "It is not so simple, Thunderer. This is not a single foe you can strike down. It is many. It is all. The end we have long feared may be closer than even Odin dares say." Thor's eyes burned with defiance. "If the end comes, then I will meet it as a warrior, not skulking in fear. The hammer was forged for this, and so was I." Heimdall finally looked at him, his gaze piercing. "Courage will not change fate, but perhaps it will light the way through it." The two stood in silence then, side by side. Far below, Midgard slumbered, unaware of the gods' unrest. The stars glittered like cold sparks scattered across the heavens. And though Asgard was quiet, Thor's heart thundered with the certainty of storms to come. That night, he vowed silently, "Let giants rise, let monsters crawl from shadow, let even fire consume the sky. So long as I breathe, none shall harm Asgard." But deep within, a small voice whispered, "Even the strongest hammer cannot strike down destiny." Chapter 55. Loki's chains weaken. Far beneath the shining halls of Asgard, where stone and shadow swallowed all light, lay the bound figure of Loki. The trickster god, once fair of tongue and sharp of wit, now writhed in silence against the chains that bound him. Gleaming links, forged by the hands of gods, pinned his limbs to the cold rock. Above him dripped the venom of a serpent, its poison hissing as it struck his flesh. For centuries, Sigyn, his faithful wife, had held a bowl above him, catching the venom drop by drop. Yet bowls filled and had to be emptied. When she turned away, the poison struck Loki's skin, and he screamed a sound that made the earth tremble with quakes. But of late, something had changed. The chains that once held fast now shivered with every spasm of his fury. What was once unbreakable now groaned faintly, as if age and fate had conspired to weaken even divine bonds. One night, as Sigyn wept beside him, Loki's laughter returned. It was not the laughter of a man defeated, but of one who saw victory on the horizon. "Do you feel it, wife?" he hissed through clenched teeth. "The world trembles. The sea churns. The wolf stirs. Even fire claws at its cage. My children call to me, and I will answer." Sigyn shook her head, tears streaming. "No, Loki, the end you dream of will bring only ruin. You will destroy all you once loved." But Loki's eyes gleamed with madness and fire. "Loved? I was never loved, save by you. Odin chained me like a beast. Thor mocked me, Heimdall scorned me, and Freya despised my tongue. Let them see now what becomes of their mockery. The end has always been written, and I am the hand that will turn the page." With a roar, Loki pulled at his bonds. Stone cracked. The serpent above hissed in agitation, its venom spilling freely. The ground quaked, and far away, in Asgard, the golden halls trembled. The gods felt it. Odin lifted his one eye from the well of Mimir, and knew the sign. Thor gripped Mjolnir, until lightning bled from his fingers. Heimdall raised Jallarhorn to his lips, but did not yet blow, for the time was not yet ripe. Still, all of Asgard whispered, "The chains of Loki weaken. Ragnarok draws near." And deep in the pit, Loki laughed and laughed, a sound like knives scraping stone, a herald of doom. Chapter 56. The Serpent Stirs. Far below the crashing waves of Midgard's seas, in the blackest trench where no mortal eye could ever see, the Jörmungandr, the World Serpent. For countless ages, it had slumbered in a circle so vast that its body encircled the very earth, its tail clenched tightly between its jaws. Bound by the prophecy of the Norns, it was destined to face Thor at the world's end. But now, the bindings of fate began to stir. The great serpent twitched, and the seas shuddered. Its scales, vast as mountain ridges, scraped against the ocean floor, sending shockwaves through the waters. Entire shoals of fish scattered in terror, while ships above were swallowed by sudden maelstroms. Sailors cried out to their gods, but none answered, for even the Aesir feared what was waking. Storms unlike any before churned across Midgard. The horizon darkened, Waves rose like towering walls, and the roar of the ocean drowned the cries of men. Coastal villages were swept away in an instant, and cliffs crumbled beneath the assault of the tide. On the wind, a sound spread, a low, thunderous hiss. It was not the whisper of a snake, but the breath of a world-ending monster. In Asgard, Odin felt the disturbance from his throne. His single eye narrowed as he gazed into the far seas. "The serpent stirs," he murmured, and his voice carried dread. Thor, son of thunder, gripped Mjolnir tightly. His jaw was set, his heart steady, yet in his eyes burned a fire of certainty. For he knew that Jörmungandr was his foe, his fate, and his doom. "Father," Thor spoke, his voice rumbling like distant thunder, "let it rise. When it does, I shall meet it. Hammer against fang, thunder against venom. One of us will not survive, but it shall not be Midgard that perishes alone." But Odin said nothing, for even the All-Father feared what was to come. In the depths, Jörmungandr's body uncoiled slowly, the earth itself trembling with each movement. Its eyes, glowing green like burning emeralds, opened for the first time in centuries. The serpent lifted its head, and the ocean split around it. Lightning flashed, thunder rolled, and the seas boiled. The serpent raised its head toward the sky and hissed, a sound so vast it echoed across every realm: Asgard, Midgard, Jotunheim, and even Hel itself. The Norns, weaving fate by Yggdrasil's roots, whispered as their threads trembled, "The coil is broken. The sea serpent stirs. The twilight is coming." And all who heard it knew. The world was rushing toward its doom. Chapter 57. Fenrir's Howl. On the plains of Asgard, beneath the shadow of the golden halls, a silence heavier than death lingered. The gods knew the sea serpent had stirred, but it was not the only child of Loki awaiting its hour. In the far reaches of the world, chained in the dark valley of Lyngvi, Fenrir the wolf lay bound by the enchanted fetters. For centuries he had strained against the silken cord woven of 6 impossibilities. The sound of a cat's footstep, the beard of a woman, the roots of a mountain, the breath of a fish, the sinews of a bear, and it had held him where no iron could, yet it burned into his flesh with every twitch. Now, as Jörmungandr shifted in the sea, Fenrir's heart ignited with fury. His great yellow eyes flared open, glowing like suns, filled with hatred. He could feel it, the pull of fate, the tremor of the earth, the call of Ragnarok. Fenrir strained, muscles bulging like mountains, splitting apart. The valley shook. Stones split, and trees toppled. The wolf snarled, and his breath was fire, a wind that scorched the grass to ash. Then came the sound, deep, terrible, eternal, a howl. It was not the cry of a beast, nor of a god, but the very sound of doom. The howl tore through the skies, echoing from Jotunheim to Midgard, from Asgard to Hel. Mortals clutched their ears and fell weeping. Giants raised their weapons and shouted with joy. The dead stirred uneasily in their graves. In Asgard, the gods froze. The howl reached their halls, shaking even the golden walls of Valhalla. Odin gripped Gungnir, his spear, so tightly that his knuckles whitened. "The wolf," he whispered. "The bonds cannot hold him much longer." Tyr, the god who had lost his hand to Fenrir's jaws, stood pale but resolute. "I knew this day would come," he said. "He will not rest until your blood stains his teeth, Alpha." Thor's thunder roared in the clouds overhead. "Let him howl. Let him break free. He will meet me, and I will drive him into the void with my hammer." But Odin shook his head. "No, my son. He is not yours, he is mine. Fenrir is fated for me, as Jörmungandr is for you. Again the howl came, louder, longer, like the cracking of the world itself. Across Midgard, wolves in the forests lifted their heads and howled in answer. Even Skull and Hati, the wolves, chasing the sun and moon, quickened their hunt, their fangs snapping closer to their celestial prey. The fetters of Gleipnir trembled. Fine threads began to snap one by one, though they had been woven from impossibilities. The air around Fenrir grew thick with the stench of blood and death. And as his final howl split the heavens, the Norns whispered beneath Yggdrasil, "The wolf will walk, the spear will fall, the father of gods shall be devoured." Chapter 58. The Breaking of Chains. The plain of Lyngvi lay silent for a heartbeat after Fenrir's earth-splitting howl. But silence was never meant to last. The fetters of Gleipnir, so thin, so delicate, yet stronger than the roots of mountains, began to quiver like threads of silk in a storm. Fenrir snarled and strained, muscles writhing beneath his shaggy black fur, saliva dripping in rivers from his vast jaws. Each breath was like a hurricane, bending trees flat to the earth. His teeth, each the length of a warrior's sword, gnashed against the empty air. Snap! One strand of Gleipnir broke, unseen to mortal eyes, but felt by all the realms. Yggdrasil groaned, as though its branches were torn. In Asgard, the gods heard it. A sound not of the ear, but of the soul. Odin closed his one good eye, and the weight of prophecy pressed heavier than ever. It begins. Thor slammed Mjolnir against the ground, sparks of thunder leaping upward. Then let it come. I have waited my whole life for this day. But even he felt a tremor of unease. Snap! Another strand of Gleipnir broke. Fenrir threw his massive body forward, claws digging into stone, carving trenches deep into the valley. Blood ran from his paws as the cords cut into him, but he reveled in the pain, for it was proof that freedom lay near. Giants in Jotunheim raised their war horns at the sound. Dwarves in their caverns trembled, for they had forged the cord that now unraveled. Mortals in Midgard fled their homes, sensing the end of days. At the third snap, the air itself shuddered. Fenrir's eyes blazed like twin suns, his voice echoing across the 9 worlds. No more chains. No more gods above me. The time has come. With a roar that split the sky, Fenrir heaved once more. The last threads of Gleipnir screamed and broke. The wolf was free. He rose, vast as a mountain, his shoulders brushing the clouds. His paws crushed forests into splinters, rivers boiled beneath his breath. His howl answered Skull and Hati, and at that moment, the wolves leaped high and sank their fangs into the sun and moon. Darkness swallowed the world. In Asgard, the Jallarhorn rang out. Heimdall's blast shook the heavens, summoning gods and Einherjar alike. Ragnarok had begun. Chapter 5-9. The Final Gathering. The Jallarhorn's echo rolled through all 9 realms, shaking even the roots of Yggdrasil. It was a sound that none could mistake the summons to the end of all things. Ragnarok had arrived. In Asgard, the Aesir assembled upon the golden plain of Vigrid, a field so vast it stretched beyond sight. Once green and shining, it now lay dark beneath the eternal eclipse. The sun and moon were gone, devoured by Skull and Hati. A crimson twilight covered the world. Odin, the Allfather, stood at the front, his spear Gungnir in hand. His face was hard as stone, yet behind the single eye burned both sorrow and unyielding resolve. He had foreseen this moment, lived with its shadow for centuries, and now it had come. At his side strode Thor, mighty in stature, Mjolnir crackling with lightning in his grip. His red beard bristled, his gaze set upon the horizon where the wolf would come. At last, he muttered, "No more waiting. No more whispers of prophecy. Only battle." Frey, lord of fertility and harvest, stood nearby. Yet he bore no sword, his mighty weapon had been given away, leaving him to face doom with only a staghorn spear. He smiled sadly, knowing fate had chosen him to fall. Tyr, one hand, lost long ago, to Fenrir's jaws, clenched his remaining fist. Justice burned in his heart, for he would not stand aside while the beast he had bound once devoured the world. Heimdall, watchman of the gods, lowered the jaw. His golden armor gleamed faintly in the twilight, his sharp eyes fixed upon the gates of Asgard. "They are coming," he said, voice low but certain. And they were. From the sea rose Jörmungandr, the Midgard serpent, scales glistening with venom, body coiling so vast it circled the earth. Each movement churned the oceans into mountains of waves. From Muspelheim came Surtur, giant of fire, wielding a flaming sword, brighter than the sun had ever shone. His army of fire giants marched behind him, their heat turning the sky red as blood. From Hel's domain came Loki, unbound from chains, leading legions of the dead. His eyes gleamed with triumph and bitterness, his laughter echoing as he raised his blade. Beside him marched his monstrous children, Fenrir, at the forefront, towering and snarling, his freedom shaking the earth. The ground quaked. The air burned. The end had come. And yet, on Vigrid, the gods did not falter. Behind Odin stood the Einherjar, the countless warriors who had fallen in battle and been carried to Valhalla. They raised their swords and shields, chanting in thunderous unison, their voices shaking the sky. For Odin, for Asgard, for the end of fear, Odin lifted Gungnir high. His cloak, woven from the feathers of ravens, billowed in the dying wind. Hugin and Munin circled above, whispering their last tidings. "This is the day," Odin declared, his voice like the roar of storms. "This is the hour we were born for. The wolf comes for me, the serpent for Thor, and the fire for the world itself. We shall not run. We shall not bow. Let our names echo in the ashes of creation." The gods raised their weapons. The warriors roared. And across the battlefield, Fenrir lifted his colossal head, meeting Odin's gaze from afar. Hatred burned in the wolf's eyes, matched only by the Allfather's grim determination. The two destinies locked eyes, and the world held its breath. The final clash was moments away. Chapter 60. The Last Battle. The plain of Vigrid trembled as two armies surged forward. The clash of fate had begun. From the east, the fire giants stormed with Surtur at their head, his flaming sword blazing like a second sun. From the west came Loki, with the legions of hell, their hollow eyes and cold steel thirsting for blood. And at the center, bounding with impossible speed, came Fenrir the monstrous wolf, his jaws gaping wide enough to swallow the sky. The gods roared and met them head-on. The earth cracked beneath the fury of their collision. Odin and Fenrir. Odin charged first, Gungnir flashing like a bolt of lightning. He hurled the spear straight into Fenrir's hide, but the wolf shook it off as if it were nothing more than a thorn. With a bound, Fenrir leaped forward, jaws snapping. The Allfather fought bravely, striking again and again, his ravens shrieking above. Yet prophecy cannot be undone. Fenrir lunged, and in one terrible motion, swallowed Odin whole. The cry of the gods rang out in despair. Yet, from the ranks surged Vidar, the silent son of Odin. With no words, he leaped upon the wolf's jaw, driving one foot down with the thick shoe crafted from the scraps of all leather ever cut. With a mighty hand, he seized Fenrir's throat, and with the other, his blade. With divine strength, Vidar tore Fenrir's jaws apart, ripping the beast asunder in vengeance. The wolf's death shook the heavens, but the Allfather was gone. Thor and Jörmungandr, on the battlefield's edge, Thor confronted his eternal foe, the Midgard serpent. Mjolnir cracked with lightning as he hurled it into the serpent's skull. Jörmungandr seed its venom spraying like a black storm across the land. The two clashed with the fury of worlds colliding, hammer against scale, thunder against poison. At last, Thor crushed the serpent's head with Mjolnir, shattering bone and shaking the seas. Jörmungandr collapsed, dead. But even victory carried doom. Thor staggered, his skin blackened by the serpent's venom. With one final breath, he stood tall, lifted Mjolnir to the sky, and then fell lifeless to the ground. Tyr and Garm. The god Tyr met Garmr, the hound of hell, in single combat. Their struggle was fierce, god and beast locked together, claw against steel. In the end, Tyr struck down the monstrous hound, but not before Garmr's fangs pierced his heart. They fell side by side, their blood mingling on the battlefield. Heimdall and Loki. Meanwhile, Heimdall, ever watchful, confronted Loki himself. The trickster god sneered, blades flashing, mocking the watchman's loyalty. But Heimdall's eyes burned with purpose. This was the end of Loki's schemes. They fought with unmatched ferocity, each blow a reflection of their hatred. At last, Heimdall drove his blade through Loki's chest. The trickster laughed bitterly, even as life fled him, and with his last breath, he struck Heimdall down as well. Both fell, twin corpses in the twilight of the gods, Surtur and the flames of doom. When the battles of gods and monsters were ended, only Surtur remained, towering, terrible, his sword blazing brighter than the sky. With no foe to stop him, he lifted the blade high and brought it down upon the world itself. The earth split, fire roared across the realms. Mountains crumbled, seas boiled, stars fell from the heavens. Yggdrasil shuddered as its roots burned. All creation was engulfed in flame. The end, the beginning. When the fire at last subsided, silence reigned. The gods were gone. The monsters were no more. The world lay in ashes, a void of smoke and ruin. But from the smoke came life. Green shoots rose from the blackened earth. To humans, and stepped out from their hidden refuge in Yggdrasil, the great tree that had survived the fire. They looked upon the empty world and began anew. The sun's daughter rose into the sky, shining brighter than her mother ever had. The seas calmed. The land grew fertile once more. And though the gods had fallen, whispers said Baldur and Hr returned from hell to rule the new world in peace. Thus, Ragnarok was not only the twilight of the gods, it was also the dawn of rebirth. The cycle turned, as it always had, and always would. Epilogue, the dawn beyond twilight. The smoke of Ragnarok still lingered in the heavens, faint and gray, like the last sigh of a dying giant. The clash of gods and monsters, the fire of Surtur, the venom of Jörmungandr. The jaws of Fenrir had fallen silent. What remained was not the roar of chaos, but the hush of rebirth. From the ashes of the 9 realms, a fragile song arose, the whisper of leaves upon the great world tree, though scarred and blackened, still stood. Its roots, nourished by the blood of gods and beasts alike, carried life into the silence. Upon the barren plains of what had once been Midgard, and emerged from the sheltering bark of the tree, their eyes, filled with awe and sorrow, gazed upon the empty horizon. There were no gods to guide them, no armies to threaten them. Only the sky, washed clean by flame, and the earth, ready to bloom anew. The sun's daughter, radiant and young, soared across the heavens. Her light fell upon the new world, gentler than before, a promise of peace. And from the halls beyond death, Baldur, the shining god, returned. With him came Hr, his brother, no longer blind with tragedy, but clear-eyed and solemn. Together, they walked among the survivors of the old world, guardians not of war, but of wisdom and renewal. The prophecies had spoken true. The end had come, and yet it was not the end. For the essence of the cosmos was not destruction, but cycle. Twilight yielded to dawn. Death yielded to life. The gods had fallen, but their memory lived in the hearts of humankind. In the whisper of the wind through Yggdrasil's branches, in the eternal rhythm of endings that give birth to beginnings. Thus was the tale of Ragnarok sealed, not merely a story of doom, but a testament to renewal. The wolf had devoured the Alf, the serpent had slain the thunderer, the fire giant had burned the world. And yet, from the ruin, green life sprang, as it ever has, as it ever will.